Lily and Rose were sisters, as different as the sun and the moon. Lily, the elder by 3 years, was careful and thoughtful, with a braid as thick as her wrist and eyes the color of warm honey. Rose, a whirlwind of energy, had hair like spun gold and eyes that sparkled with mischief. Their small village nestled beside the Whispering Woods, a place spoken of only in hushed tones. Legend whispered that the woods were a hungry place, swallowing those who dared to enter and never letting them return. People vanished, woodcutters, stray children, even brave hunters, leaving no trace but a lingering unease in the village. Lily always heeded the warnings, staying close to home and her chores. But Rose, with her adventurous spirit, found the tales fascinating. "Imagine what secrets are hidden there, Lily," she'd exclaim, her eyes shining with excitement. Lily would shiver, pulling her sister closer. "Secrets best left undisturbed, Rose," she'd reply, but Rose never truly listened. One sweltering summer afternoon, boredom hung heavy in the air. Lily was mending a tear in her dress, while Rose was listlessly flipping through a worn storybook. "I'm bored," Rose announced, the word stretching into a whine. Lily sighed. "Then find something to do, Rose. Help me with this dress, perhaps." Rose wrinkled her nose. "Sewing is boring. I want an adventure." She gazed longingly towards the dark line of trees in the distance. "I bet the Whispering Woods aren't really that scary. It's just stories to frighten children." A dare flickered in Rose's eyes, a dangerous glint Lily knew all too well. "I dare you to go inside," Rose whispered, her voice barely audible. Lily's heart pounded. She knew she shouldn't, but the thought of Rose venturing in alone was even more terrifying. "Only to the edge," Lily countered, her voice trembling slightly. "And only for a little while." Rose grinned, her face alight with triumph. The forbidden woods beckoned. Hand in hand, the sisters approached the edge of the Whispering Woods. The air grew cooler, the sunlight fading as they stepped beneath the canopy of leaves. The trees were ancient and gnarled, their branches twisted like bony fingers reaching out to grab them. Shadows danced around them, playing tricks on their eyes. Lily gripped Rose's hand tighter, her heart pounding in her chest. "Rose, maybe this wasn't such a good idea," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the rustling of the leaves. Rose squeezed her hand back, a reassuring smile on her face. "Don't be scared, Lily. It's just trees." But it wasn't just trees. There was a stillness in the air, an unnatural silence that made the hairs on Lily's arms stand on end. The birds had stopped singing, the squirrels had vanished, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath. They walked a little further, the path barely visible beneath a thick carpet of fallen leaves. The trees grew closer together, their branches intertwining to form a dark and oppressive tunnel. Lily stumbled over a root, and Rose steadied her. "See? Nothing to worry about," Rose said, but even her voice sounded a little strained now. Suddenly, a twig snapped nearby. Lily jumped, her eyes wide with fear. "What was that?" she gasped. Rose strained her ears. "Probably just a deer," she said, trying to sound confident, but Lily could see the doubt in her eyes. They continued on, their steps slow and hesitant. The woods seemed to be watching them, waiting for them to make a mistake. Lily wished they had never come. She wanted to turn back, to run back to the safety of their village, but she knew Rose wouldn't let her. The dare was out there, hanging over their heads like a dark cloud. They had to go a little further, just to prove they weren't afraid. But with every step, the woods seemed to grow darker, more menacing, and Lily's fear grew stronger. The twig snap seemed to have broken some kind of invisible barrier. The woods pressed in closer, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves. They walked on, deeper and deeper, until they stumbled upon something truly strange, a path. It wasn't just any path. It was clearly very old, overgrown with weeds and moss, but still discernible. What made it truly unsettling, however, was what lined it. On either side, perched on tree stumps and nestled amongst the roots, were dolls. Not pretty, porcelain dolls like the ones Rose sometimes played with. These were old, worn, and unsettling. Some were missing eyes, their empty sockets staring blankly ahead. Others had cracked faces, their painted smiles twisted into grotesque grimaces. Their clothes were faded and torn, their limbs dangling at odd angles. Lily gasped, recoiling in horror. "What are those?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Rose, despite her bravado, looked equally unnerved. I don't know," she stammered, taking a step back. The dolls seemed to watch them, their silent presence heavy and oppressive. Lily felt a prickling sensation on the back of her neck, as if 100 unseen eyes were focused on them. She wanted to run, to flee from this bizarre and terrifying place, but she couldn't tear her gaze away from the dolls. One doll, perched on a particularly large tree stump, caught her eye. It was smaller than the others, and its face was almost completely obscured by dirt and grime. But something about it seemed familiar. Lily took a tentative step closer, squinting to get a better look. As she did, a gust of wind swept through the woods, rustling the leaves and causing the dolls to sway slightly. The smaller doll seemed to nod its head, as if beckoning her forward. Lily froze, her heart pounding in her chest. This was wrong. This was all wrong. They had to leave. Now. "Rose," she said, her voice urgent. "We have to go. This place is evil." But Rose didn't answer. She was staring down the path, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. And then, Lily heard it too, a faint, ethereal singing, drifting through the trees. The singing was like nothing Lily had ever heard before. It was high and sweet, almost like a bird's song, but with a haunting quality that sent shivers down her spine. It seemed to weave its way through the trees, wrapping around them like ivy. "Do you hear that?" Lily whispered, her eyes wide with fear. Rose nodded, her gaze fixed on the path ahead. "It's beautiful," she breathed, her voice filled with wonder. But to Lily, it wasn't beautiful. It was unsettling, unnatural. It felt like a lure, a siren's call meant to draw them deeper into the woods. And what was even stranger was that the song seemed familiar to Rose, but Lily couldn't place it at all. "What is it?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. "Do you know that song?" Rose frowned, her brow furrowed in concentration. I think so," she said slowly. "It's like a memory, a dream. I can't quite grasp it." She took a step forward, drawn towards the music. Lily grabbed her arm. "Rose, no. We have to go back. This is dangerous." Rose shook her head, her eyes shining with an almost feverish intensity. "I have to know what it is, Lily. I have to know where it's coming from." She gently pulled her arm free from Lily's grasp and started down the path, her footsteps light and quick. Lily hesitated for a moment, torn between her fear and her loyalty to her sister. She didn't want to go any further into the woods, but she couldn't let Rose go alone. With a sigh of resignation, she followed after her, her heart heavy with dread. As they walked, the singing grew louder, more insistent. The dolls seemed to watch them with knowing eyes, their silent presence adding to the oppressive atmosphere. Lily felt like they were being led into a trap, like they were walking into the jaws of some unseen beast. But Rose seemed oblivious to the danger, her attention completely focused on the music. The path twisted and turned, leading them deeper and deeper into the heart of the whispering woods. The trees grew taller, their branches blocking out the sky. The air grew colder, the shadows darker. And the singing grew stronger, filling Lily's ears with its haunting melody. A melody that Rose seemed to recognize, but Lily couldn't quite place, a melody that felt both beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The deeper they went, the more Lily felt like they were being watched. It wasn't just the dolls, although their vacant stares were unsettling enough. It was something else, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. A feeling of eyes upon them, of being observed by unseen creatures lurking in the shadows. The trees seemed to lean in closer, their branches forming a cage around them. The air grew heavy, making it difficult to breathe. Lily shivered, despite the summer heat. She could feel the fear coiling in her stomach, tightening with every step they took. "Rose, please," she pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. "Let's just go back. I don't like this place. I don't like any of this." Rose didn't answer. She was completely entranced by the singing, her eyes glazed over, her face serene. She seemed to be in a trance, oblivious to the danger that surrounded them. Lily stopped walking, planting her feet firmly on the path. "Rose," she said, her voice louder this time. "Stop. We're going back." Rose finally stopped, turning to face her sister. Her eyes were still distant, unfocused. "But the song," she murmured. "I have to find out where it's coming from." "It doesn't matter," Lily exclaimed, her voice rising in panic. "It's not safe here. We don't belong here. People disappear in these woods, Rose. Don't you remember the stories?" Rose frowned, her brow furrowed in confusion. "But it feels like I do belong here," she said softly. "Like I'm supposed to be here." Lily's heart sank. She could see that Rose was completely lost, completely captivated by the woods and the singing. She knew that she couldn't reason with her, that she couldn't convince her to turn back. "Fine," Lily said, her voice trembling. "But if we go any further, we go together. And if anything happens, we leave. No questions asked." Rose smiled, a faint, faraway smile. "Okay, Lily," she said, her voice barely audible. "Together." And so, hand in hand, the sisters continued down the path, deeper and deeper into the heart of the whispering woods, their fate hanging in the balance. The singing grew louder, the shadows grew darker, and the feeling of being watched grew stronger. Lily knew that they were walking into danger, but she couldn't bring herself to abandon her sister. She could only hope that they would both make it out alive. The path wound through the woods like a serpent, leading them further and further away from anything familiar. The trees were so tall now that they blotted out the sun, casting the path in perpetual twilight. The air was thick with the smell of damp moss and decaying wood, and the silence was broken only by the haunting melody of the song and the rustling of unseen creatures in the undergrowth. Lily's legs were starting to ache, and her throat was dry. She longed for a drink of water, for a patch of sunlight, for anything that would break the oppressive atmosphere of the woods. But she knew that they couldn't stop, not yet. Not as long as Rose was so determined to follow the song. "Rose," Lily said, her voice hoarse. "How much further? We've been walking for ages." Rose didn't answer immediately. She seemed to be lost in her own world, her eyes fixed on some distant point that only she could see. Finally, she blinked and turned to face Lily, her expression a mixture of excitement and apprehension. I think we're close," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I can feel it. The song is getting louder." Lily shivered. "But what if it's dangerous, Rose? What if there's something waiting for us?" Rose shook her head, her eyes shining with an almost feverish intensity. "It's not dangerous, Lily. It's calling me. I have to go. Just a little further, okay? Just until we see where the song is coming from. Then we can go back, I promise." Lily hesitated. She knew that Rose was being reckless, that she was letting her curiosity override her common sense. But she also knew that she couldn't abandon her sister. She had promised to stay with her, no matter what. "Okay," Lily said, her voice trembling. "But just a little further, Rose. And if I say we have to go, we go. No arguments." Rose smiled, a bright, radiant smile that chased away some of the shadows in Lily's heart. "Thank you, Lily," she said, squeezing her hand. "I promise, you won't regret this." And so, with renewed determination, the sisters continued down the path, their steps quick and light. The singing grew louder, the shadows grew darker, and the feeling of anticipation grew stronger. They were close, Lily could feel it. Close to something, she didn't know what, but she knew that it was something important. Something that would change their lives forever. That night, after a meager dinner eaten in near silence, Lily tossed and turned in her bed. The image of the dolls, their empty eyes staring, haunted her. The song, though no longer audible, echoed in her mind. She glanced over at Rose, sleeping soundly in the other bed, her face peaceful and serene. Lily envied her sister's ability to find comfort in the unsettling melody. Unable to sleep, Lily crept out of bed and went to the window. The moon was a sliver in the sky, casting long, eerie shadows across the village. The whispering woods loomed in the distance, a dark and impenetrable mass. She shivered, pulling her shawl tighter around her. Suddenly, she heard it, the singing. It was faint, barely audible, but unmistakable. It seemed to be coming from the direction of the woods. Lily's heart leaped into her throat. Was Rose awake? She glanced back at her sister's bed. Rose was still asleep, her breathing slow and regular. But then, Lily noticed something strange. Rose's eyes were open. Not wide open, but just a crack, as if she were peeking out from beneath her eyelids. And her lips were moving, as if she were silently mouthing the words of the song. Lily felt a chill run down her spine. She tiptoed over to Rose's bed and knelt beside her. "Rose," she whispered, gently shaking her shoulder. "Rose, wake up." Rose didn't respond. Her eyes remained half-closed, her lips still moving. Lily shook her harder, her voice growing more urgent. "Rose. What's wrong?" Suddenly, Rose sat bolt upright in bed, her eyes wide and vacant. She stared straight ahead, as if she were looking at something that Lily couldn't see. And then, she started to sing. The song was no longer faint and ethereal. It was loud and clear, filling the room with its haunting melody. Rose's voice was strong and pure, but there was something unsettling about it, something that made Lily's skin crawl. Without a word, Rose climbed out of bed and walked towards the door, her movements stiff and mechanical. Lily watched in horror as her sister opened the door and stepped out into the night, drawn by the irresistible pull of the song. "Rose!" Lily cried, scrambling to her feet. "Where are you going?" "Rose, come back." But Rose didn't answer. She simply walked away, her figure disappearing into the shadows. And then, Lily was alone, the haunting melody of the song echoing in her ears, the chilling realization dawning on her that her sister was gone. Gone into the whispering woods, lured away by the song, and Lily didn't know if she would ever see her again. The morning dawned gray and bleak, mirroring the despair in Lily's heart. The singing was gone, replaced by a deafening silence that felt even more oppressive. She ran to the door, hoping against hope that Rose had returned, but the village street was empty. Panic clawed at her throat. She raced through the village, calling Rose's name, but only the curious stares of the villagers greeted her. They knew, she could see it in their eyes. They knew that Rose had gone into the whispering woods, and they knew that she wasn't coming back. She pleaded with them for help, begging them to join her in a search, but they turned away, muttering about the dangers of the woods, about the legends, about the fate of those who dared to enter. "The woods take what they want," old Martha grumbled, shaking her head. "Best to leave it be." Tears streamed down Lily's face. She couldn't believe that they were so willing to abandon Rose, to write her off as another victim of the woods. She wouldn't give up. She wouldn't let Rose become just another story. Alone, she ran to the edge of the whispering woods, her heart pounding in her chest. The trees loomed over her, dark and menacing, their branches reaching out like skeletal arms. She hesitated for a moment, fear warring with determination. But then, she remembered Rose's smile, her laughter, her unwavering spirit. She couldn't let her down. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the woods, her voice trembling as she called out Rose's name. Rose! Rose, where are you? It's me, Lily. Please answer me. The woods remained silent, mocking her with their indifference. She stumbled through the undergrowth, pushing aside branches, tripping over roots, her hope dwindling with every step. She searched for hours, until the sun began to set, casting long, eerie shadows that made the woods even more terrifying. Finally, exhausted and defeated, she collapsed against a tree, tears streaming down her face. She had failed. She had promised to protect Rose, and she had let her down. She was alone, lost in the whispering woods, with no hope of finding her sister. Or so she thought. A faint whisper caught her ear. Lily, it seemed to say. Help me. Lily's head snapped up, her heart leaping with hope. Could it be? Was it Rose? She strained her ears, listening intently. The whisper came again, fainter this time, but still unmistakable. Lily. I'm here. Hope surged through Lily, banishing the despair that had threatened to consume her. Rose? Is that you? Where are you? She cried, her voice filled with renewed determination. She followed the sound of the whisper, pushing through the dense undergrowth, her hands and face scratched and bleeding. The woods seemed to resist her progress, the branches snagging at her clothes, the roots tripping her feet. But she pressed on, driven by the desperate hope of finding her sister. The whisper grew louder, leading her deeper and deeper into the heart of the woods. The trees were taller here, their branches intertwining to form a dark and oppressive canopy. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves, and the silence was broken only by the rustling of unseen creatures in the shadows. Finally, she reached a small clearing. In the center of the clearing stood an ancient oak tree, its trunk gnarled and twisted, its branches reaching up towards the sky like supplicating arms. And at the base of the tree, lying on a bed of moss, was Rose. Lily gasped, her heart soaring with relief. She ran towards her sister, her arms outstretched. Rose! Oh, Rose, I found you. But as she got closer, she realized that something was wrong. Rose was lying still and silent, her eyes closed, her face pale and drawn. She looked like she was sleeping, but there was something unnatural about her stillness, something that made Lily's blood run cold. She knelt beside Rose, gently shaking her shoulder. Rose, wake up, she whispered. It's me, Lily. I'm here. Rose didn't respond. Lily shook her harder, her voice growing more urgent. Rose. Please, wake up. I'm so scared. Suddenly, Rose's eyes fluttered open. She stared up at Lily, her gaze blank and unfocused. Lily, she murmured, her voice weak and distant. Is that you? Yes, Rose, it's me, Lily said, her voice trembling with emotion. I'm so glad you're okay. What happened? Are you hurt? Rose blinked, her brow furrowed in confusion. I don't know, she said slowly. I remember the song. And then? Nothing. She looked around the clearing, her eyes widening with fear. Where are we, Lily? What is this place? We're in the whispering woods, Rose, Lily said, her voice barely a whisper. But it's okay. I'm here now. I'm going to take you home. She reached out to take Rose's hand, but as her fingers brushed against her sister's skin, she felt a jolt of electricity, a strange and unsettling energy that made her recoil in horror. Rose's skin was cold and clammy, like the bark of a tree, and her hand felt strangely lifeless. Lily stared at her sister, her heart filled with a growing sense of dread. Something was terribly wrong. Rose was here, but she wasn't really here. The woods had taken her, and something else had taken her place. Lily couldn't bring herself to take that thing home. It looked like Rose, sounded like Rose, but it wasn't her sister. The spark was gone, the warmth extinguished. With a heavy heart, she left the clearing, the image of Rose's vacant eyes burned into her memory. She stumbled back to the village, the setting sun casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to mock her. The villagers, seeing her return alone, averted their gazes, their silence a condemnation. She didn't blame them. She had failed. She had disobeyed the warnings, ventured into the whispering woods, and now Rose was lost forever. Back in their small cottage, the silence was deafening. Every corner of the room reminded her of Rose, her drawings on the wall, her dolls on the shelf, her favorite storybook lying open on the table. Lily sank onto her bed, tears streaming down her face. The world felt empty and cold without her sister's laughter, her warmth, her unwavering spirit. Sleep offered no escape. The haunting melody of the song filled her dreams, weaving through her nightmares, a constant reminder of her loss. She saw Rose walking down the dull-lined path, her eyes glazed over, her hand outstretched toward some unseen force. She tried to call out to her, to warn her, but her voice was lost in the wind. The dolls were there too, their empty eyes staring, their painted smiles twisted into grotesque grimaces. They seemed to be laughing at her, mocking her failure to protect Rose. She woke up screaming, her body drenched in sweat, the song still echoing in her ears. Days turned into weeks, and Lily's grief deepened. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped caring. She spent her days staring out the window, watching the rain fall on the whispering woods, listening for any sign of Rose. The villagers whispered about her, calling her crazy, saying that she was haunted by the woods. They avoided her, crossing the street when they saw her coming, their fear and superstition stronger than their compassion. Lily didn't care. She was lost in her own world of grief and regret, her mind consumed by the image of Rose, by the haunting melody of the song, by the terrifying realization that she had lost her sister to the whispering woods, and she didn't know how to get her back. She just knew she had to try. She owed it to Rose. And then, one rainy afternoon, she heard it. A faint, sorrowful voice calling her name from the trees. "Lily," it whispered. "Help me." And Lily knew, with a certainty that defied all reason, that it was Rose. And that she had to go back. The rain continued to fall, a relentless drumming against the roof of the cottage. Lily sat by the window, her gaze fixed on the whispering woods, her mind replaying the events of the past weeks. The song, the dolls, Rose's vacant eyes. It was all a terrifying puzzle, and she was determined to solve it. But how? The villagers were no help, their fear and superstition blinding them to reason. She was alone, facing an ancient and malevolent force that had already claimed her sister. What could she possibly do? She closed her eyes, trying to block out the images that haunted her. But it was no use. The song was there, always there, a constant reminder of her loss. And now, a new sound had joined the chorus of her grief, Rose's voice. Faint and sorrowful, it drifted through the trees, carried on the wind and the rain. "Lily. Help me," it whispered. "I'm lost." Lily's heart ached with a mixture of hope and despair. It was Rose, she was sure of it. But her voice sounded so weak, so distant, as if she were trapped in some far-off place, beyond Lily's reach. She couldn't ignore it. She couldn't stay here, safe and dry, while her sister was suffering. She had to do something. But what? She remembered the path, the dull-lined path that had led them deeper and deeper into the woods. Perhaps that was the key. Perhaps if she followed the path again, she could find Rose, she could break the spell, she could bring her sister home. But the thought of returning to that place filled her with dread. The woods were dark and dangerous, and she was just one small girl, armed with nothing but her love for her sister. What if she failed again? What if she got lost, or worse, what if she became trapped in the woods herself? She pushed the fear aside. She couldn't let it control her. She had to be brave, for Rose. She had to do whatever it took to bring her sister home. She stood up from the window, her eyes filled with determination. She wouldn't let the Whispering Woods win. She wouldn't let Rose become just another story. She was going back, and this time, she wasn't coming back without her sister. She began to gather her supplies, a warm cloak, a loaf of bread, a flask of water, and a small, silver locket that contained a picture of her and Rose, taken on a sunny day by the river. It was a reminder of happier times, a reminder of the bond that they shared. As she packed, she noticed something else, a small, wooden doll, lying on the floor beneath Rose's bed. It was one of the dolls from the path, the one that had seemed to nod its head, beckoning her forward. How had it gotten here? A chill ran down Lily's spine. She picked up the doll, her fingers trembling. It felt cold and lifeless in her hand, and its empty eyes seemed to stare right through her. She knew, with a certainty that defied all reason, that this doll was connected to Rose's disappearance. And that it held the key to bringing her home. Clutching the doll tightly in her hand, Lily spent the next few days in a state of feverish preparation. She knew that she couldn't just rush into the woods unprepared. She had to understand what she was up against. She spent hours poring over old books and scrolls in the village library, searching for any mention of the Whispering Woods, of the song, of the dolls. But she found nothing. The woods were shrouded in mystery, their secrets guarded by superstition and fear. She tried to talk to the villagers, hoping to glean some information from their stories and legends. But they refused to speak to her, their faces etched with fear and disapproval. She was an outcast, tainted by her association with the woods. Undeterred, Lily began to spend her days near the edge of the woods, listening intently for any sign of Rose, trying to decipher the haunting melody of the song. She sat beneath the trees, her eyes closed, her mind focused on the sounds around her. She listened to the rustling of the leaves, the chirping of the birds, the whispering of the wind. She tried to isolate the song, to separate it from the other sounds of the forest. But it was elusive, always just out of reach. Sometimes, she thought she could hear Rose's voice, faint and sorrowful, calling her name from the trees. But when she opened her eyes and called back, there was only silence. She started to keep a journal, writing down everything she could remember about the woods, about the song, about the dolls. She drew pictures of the path, of the trees, of the creatures that she thought she saw lurking in the shadows. She studied the doll, examining it closely, trying to understand its significance. It was small and crudely made, its features almost completely obscured by dirt and grime. But something about it seemed familiar. She remembered the day they had found the path, the day that Rose had first heard the song. She remembered the way the doll had seemed to nod its head, beckoning her forward. What had it meant? She tried to remember the words of the song, but they were elusive, fading from her memory like a dream. She knew that Rose had recognized the tune, but Lily couldn't place it at all. Why? What was so special about Rose that she could hear something that Lily couldn't? She closed her eyes, trying to focus on the memory. She saw Rose's face, her eyes shining with excitement, her lips moving in time with the music. And then, something clicked. A memory, long forgotten, surfaced in her mind. A memory of her grandmother, sitting by the fire, singing a lullaby to Rose. A lullaby that Lily had always dismissed as childish nonsense. A lullaby that Rose had always loved. The same tune. It was the same tune as the song from the Whispering Woods. The memory flooded Lily's mind, vivid and clear. She was just a little girl herself, sitting by the fire with her grandmother and baby Rose. The fire crackled merrily, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Her grandmother, a kind and gentle woman with a warm smile and twinkling eyes, held Rose in her arms, rocking her gently back and forth. And then, she began to sing. It was a simple lullaby, a sweet and soothing melody that spoke of love and protection. The words were nonsense, filled with rhymes and rhythms that were meant to lull a baby to sleep. Lily had always found the song silly, dismissing it as childish and unimportant. She preferred the stories her grandmother told, tales of brave knights and magical creatures. But Rose had loved the lullaby. Her eyes would light up whenever her grandmother sang it, and she would often fall asleep with a peaceful smile on her face, lulled into a dreamland by the sweet melody. Lily remembered how she used to tease Rose about the lullaby, calling her a baby and making fun of the silly words. Rose would just giggle and snuggle closer to their grandmother, her eyes shining with affection. Now, as Lily sat alone in her cottage, the memory of the lullaby filled her with a profound sense of sadness and regret. She had been so quick to dismiss it, so quick to judge it, without ever realizing its significance. It was more than just a silly song. It was a connection, a bond between Rose and their grandmother, a secret language that only they understood. And now, that secret language had been used against them, twisted and corrupted by the whispering woods. The lullaby had become a lure, a siren's call that had drawn Rose into the darkness. Lily knew, with a certainty that defied all reason, that she had to learn the lullaby. She had to remember the words, she had to recapture the melody, she had to understand what it meant to Rose. It was the only way to save her. She closed her eyes, trying to focus on the memory of her grandmother's voice. She hummed the tune, hum. Lily hummed the lullaby, over and over, until the melody was etched into her mind. She wrote down the words as best as she could remember them, filling page after page with the silly rhymes and rhythms that had once seemed so meaningless. Now, they were her lifeline, her only hope of saving Rose. She knew that going back into the woods was a risk, a gamble with her life. But she couldn't stay here, doing nothing, while her sister was lost and alone. She had to try. She owed it to Rose, and she owed it to herself. She spent the rest of the day preparing for her journey. She sharpened her knife, packed her bag with supplies, and mended her clothes. She took a long, hot bath, washing away the grime and despair of the past weeks. As the sun began to set, she stood before the mirror, staring at her reflection. She barely recognized herself. Her face was pale and drawn, her eyes dark and hollow. But there was also a new strength in her gaze, a fierce determination that had not been there before. She took a deep breath, steeling her nerves. She was ready. She slipped on her cloak, grabbed her bag, and headed out into the night. The village was silent and still, the houses dark and shuttered. She walked quickly, her footsteps echoing on the cobblestone streets. As she reached the edge of the whispering woods, she paused, her heart pounding in her chest. The trees loomed over her, dark and menacing, their branches reaching out like skeletal arms. The air was cold and damp, and the silence was broken only by the rustling of unseen creatures in the shadows. She took out the doll, holding it tightly in her hand. It felt cold and lifeless, but she knew that it held the key to her journey. She closed her eyes, said a silent prayer, and stepped into the woods. The path was dark and overgrown, barely visible beneath the thick carpet of fallen leaves. The trees pressed in closer, their branches forming a dark and oppressive tunnel. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves, and the silence was broken only by the haunting melody of the song. Lily shivered, but she pressed on, her eyes fixed on the path ahead. She was determined to bring Rose home, no matter what the cost. The woods could throw whatever they wanted at her. She was ready. She was coming for her sister. The dull-lined path stretched before her, a silent invitation into the heart of the darkness. Lily clutched the doll tighter, its cold, lifeless presence strangely comforting. She took a deep breath and began to walk, her footsteps slow and deliberate. The singing grew louder with every step she took, its haunting melody weaving through the trees, guiding her deeper and deeper into the woods. The dolls seemed to watch her, their empty eyes following her every move. She tried to ignore them, focusing on the path ahead, on the sound of the song, on the image of Rose's face. The woods grew darker, more menacing. The trees were taller, their branches intertwining to form a dense canopy that blotted out the moon and the stars. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves, and the silence was broken only by the rustling of unseen creatures in the shadows and the haunting melody of the song. She passed familiar landmarks, the twisted oak tree where she and Rose had rested, the moss-covered stone where she had stumbled and scraped her knee, the small clearing where she had first heard Rose's voice calling for help. Each one brought back a flood of memories, of happier times, of the bond that she and Rose had shared. But these memories only strengthened her resolve. She wouldn't let the woods take away those memories. She would fight for them, she would fight for Rose, she would fight for her life. As she walked, she began to hum the lullaby, her voice faint and trembling at first, but growing stronger with each repetition. The song seemed to resonate with the woods, filling the air with its sweet and soothing melody. The dolls seemed to react to the song, their heads tilting slightly, their empty eyes seeming to glow with an eerie light. The singing grew louder, more insistent, as if the woods were trying to drown out her voice. But Lily refused to be silenced. She sang louder, her voice filled with emotion, with love, with determination. She sang for Rose, she sang for herself, she sang for their grandmother, she sang for anyone who had ever been lost in the woods. And then, she saw it. A light, faint and flickering, in the distance. A beacon of hope in the heart of the darkness. The singing grew louder, more insistent, pulling her towards the light. She knew that she was close. She knew that she was about to face whatever had taken Rose. And she knew that she had to be ready. The light led her to a clearing, bathed in an ethereal glow. The trees around the clearing were draped with shimmering moss, and the air was filled with a sweet, floral scent. In the center of the clearing, floating just above the ground, was a being of pure light and energy. It was vaguely humanoid in shape, with long, flowing hair that shimmered like moonlight on water and eyes that sparkled like distant stars. Its face was beautiful, but also filled with an unbearable sadness, as if it carried the weight of the world on its shoulders. The singing emanated from it, a haunting melody that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of the woods. It was a song of longing, of loss, of a deep and abiding sorrow. Lily stopped at the edge of the clearing, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never seen anything so beautiful, so otherworldly, so terrifying. She clutched the doll tighter, her knuckles white. The being turned its gaze towards her, its eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and pity. It didn't speak, but Lily could feel its presence in her mind, a gentle probing, a silent question. "Who are you?" Lily asked, her voice barely a whisper. "What have you done with my sister?" The being remained silent for a moment, its eyes filled with sorrow. Then, it raised a hand, and an image appeared in the air before Lily. It was Rose, lying on a bed of moss, her eyes closed, her face peaceful and serene. She looked like she was sleeping, but there was something unnatural about her stillness, something that made Lily's blood run cold. "She is here," the being finally said, its voice a soft, melodic whisper that seemed to echo through the clearing. "She is safe. She is at peace. But she's not really here, is she?" Lily said, her voice trembling with emotion. "You've taken her, you've trapped her in some kind of dream." The being nodded slowly, its eyes filled with sorrow. "She was lost, she was hurting. I offered her solace, a place where she could be free from pain, free from sorrow. But that's not life," Lily exclaimed, her voice rising in anger. "Life is about joy and sorrow, about love and loss. You can't just take away the pain, you have to experience it, you have to learn from it." The being sighed, a sound like the rustling of leaves in the wind. "You do not understand," it said. "The pain in this world is too great. It consumes everything. I offer sanctuary, a place where the pain cannot reach you." "But Rose doesn't want sanctuary," Lily said, her voice filled with determination. "She wants to live, she wants to experience life, even if it means feeling pain. She wants to be with me." The being looked at Lily, its eyes filled with pity. "You are brave, little one," it said. "But you cannot win. The power of the woods is too great. You cannot save her. I have to try, Lily said, her voice trembling but firm. She's my sister. I'll never give up on her. And with that, she raised her knife, her eyes fixed on the ethereal being, ready to fight for her sister, ready to fight for her life, ready to fight for the power of love. The being sighed again, a sound that seemed to shake the very trees in the clearing. I did not harm her, it said, its voice filled with a deep and abiding sadness. I only offered her refuge. She was drawn to the song, to the woods. She wanted to escape the pain of the world. But she doesn't belong here, Lily said, her voice trembling but firm. She belongs with me. We belong together. The being looked at her, its eyes filled with pity. She is part of the woods now, it said. Her spirit is intertwined with the trees, with the flowers, with the song. She can never truly leave. Lily's heart sank. Was it hopeless, then? Was Rose lost forever, trapped in this dreamlike state, a prisoner of the woods? But then, she remembered Rose's smile, her laughter, her unwavering spirit. She couldn't give up. She wouldn't let the woods win. There has to be a way, she said, her voice filled with determination. There has to be a way to bring her back, to break the spell, to free her from this place. The being looked at her, its eyes filled with a flicker of hope. There is a choice, it said. You could stay here, with her. You could join her in this dream, and be free from pain forever. Lily hesitated. The thought of being with Rose, of escaping the pain and sorrow of the world, was tempting. But she knew that it wasn't the right choice. It wasn't what Rose would want. No, she said, her voice firm. I can't. I have to go back. I have to live my life, even if it means feeling pain. And I have to bring Rose with me. The being nodded slowly, its eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and admiration. Then you must choose, it said. You can stay with Rose, in the woods, forever. Or you can try to break the spell and bring her back to the real world. But be warned, the path will be difficult, and there is no guarantee of success. Lily looked at the being, her eyes filled with determination. I choose to save her, she said. I choose to bring her back. The being smiled, a faint, ethereal smile that lit up the clearing. Then you must be brave, little one, it said. For the woods will test you, they will try to break you. But if you hold true to your love for your sister, you may yet succeed. And then, it spoke a riddle. To break the spell, you must find what is lost, what is broken, and what is truly shared. Lily frowned, trying to decipher the riddle. What was lost? What was broken? And what was truly shared? The answers seemed to dance just beyond her grasp, elusive and tantalizing. She thought of Rose, of her laughter, her smile, her unwavering spirit. What had she lost in the woods? Her freedom. Her memory. Her connection to the real world. She thought of herself, of her grief, her fear, her determination. What was broken within her? Her heart. Her trust. Her hope. And then, she thought of their bond, of the love that they shared, of the memories that they had created together. What was truly shared between them? Their childhood. Their family. Their dreams. She looked at the doll in her hand, its empty eyes staring blankly ahead. What role did it play in all of this? Was it a clue? A symbol? A weapon? The being watched her patiently, its eyes filled with a knowing sadness. It knew that the answers were within her reach, but it couldn't tell her what they were. She had to find them herself. Lily closed her eyes, trying to focus on the riddle. What was lost? What was broken? What was truly shared? The words echoed in her mind, swirling around and around, until they began to take shape, to form a pattern, to reveal a hidden meaning. Suddenly, it clicked. She understood. The lost was the lullaby's original meaning, twisted by the woods into a lure. The broken was their grandmother's locket, which had fallen open in the struggle to help Rose. And what they truly shared was their love for each other, symbolized by a shared memory of building a fairy house in the woods when they were small. With newfound determination, Lily opened her eyes. She knew what she had to do. "Thank you," she said to the being, her voice filled with gratitude. "I understand now." The being smiled, a faint, ethereal smile that lit up the clearing. "Then go," it said. "And may your love guide you." Lily turned and ran, following the path back through the woods, her heart filled with hope. She knew that the journey ahead would be difficult, but she was ready. She had the answers to the riddle, and she had the power of love on her side. She was going to save Rose, no matter what it took. She just hoped she wasn't too late. The path seemed different now, less menacing, less oppressive. The trees no longer seemed to lean in, their branches forming a protective canopy overhead. The air was lighter, filled with the sweet scent of wildflowers. Even the dolls seemed less menacing, their empty eyes seeming to twinkle with amusement. Lily knew that the woods were testing her, trying to lure her into a false sense of security. But she wouldn't be fooled. She knew that the journey ahead would be difficult, and she had to be prepared for anything. She reached the twisted oak tree where she and Rose had rested, the place where their grandmother's locket had fallen open. She knelt down and picked up the locket, examining it closely. The picture inside, of her and Rose, taken on a sunny day by the river, was faded and cracked, a mirror image of their broken bond. She gently closed the locket, holding it tightly in her hand. Then, she remembered what she had to do. She continued down the path, humming the lullaby, her voice filled with emotion. She reached the spot where she and Rose had built their fairy house, a small clearing hidden amongst the trees. The fairy house was still there, though it was overgrown with weeds and moss. It was a simple structure, made of sticks and stones and leaves, but it held a wealth of memories. She and Rose had spent hours building it, decorating it with flowers and berries, imagining the tiny creatures that might live inside. Lily knelt down beside the fairy house, her heart aching with sadness. She remembered how happy they had been, how carefree, how innocent. The woods had taken that innocence away, had twisted their memories into something dark and sinister. But she wouldn't let it win. She would reclaim those memories, she would restore the lullaby to its original meaning, she would rebuild their bond. She began to clear away the weeds and moss that had overgrown the fairy house, her fingers working quickly and efficiently. She gathered fresh flowers and berries, replacing the faded and withered ones. She sang the lullaby, her voice growing stronger with each repetition. As she worked, she could feel the woods beginning to change. The air grew lighter, the shadows receded, the singing fading away, replaced by the gentle sounds of the forest, the chirping of birds, the rustling of leaves, the whispering of the wind. The dolls began to crumble and fade, their empty eyes losing their eerie glow. And then, she heard a voice. "Lily?" It was Rose, her voice weak and disoriented, but unmistakably her. Lily's head snapped up, her heart soaring with joy. She looked around the clearing, searching for her sister. And then, she saw her. Rose was standing at the edge of the clearing, her eyes wide with confusion, her face pale and drawn. She looked like she had just woken up from a long dream. "Rose!" Lily cried, running towards her sister. "Oh, Rose, you're back." Rose stared at her, her eyes filled with a mixture of recognition and disbelief. "Lily? What are you doing here? Where am I?" "You're in the Whispering Woods," Lily said, her voice trembling with emotion. "But it's okay. I'm here now. I'm going to take you home." She reached out and took Rose's hand, and this time, there was no jolt of electricity, no cold, lifeless touch. Rose's hand was warm and soft, just like she remembered it. The sisters embraced, holding each other tightly, tears streaming down their faces. They were finally reunited, after what seemed like an eternity. The woods had tried to tear them apart, but their love had been stronger. "I missed you so much," Rose whispered, her voice muffled by Lily's shoulder. "I missed you too," Lily said, her voice choked with emotion. "I'm so glad you're back." They stood there for a long moment, holding each other close, savoring the feeling of being together again. The woods seemed to sigh around them, a sound of relief and acceptance. The spell was broken. The sisters were free. But their journey wasn't over yet. They still had to find their way back home. And they knew that the woods would be watching them, waiting for them to make a mistake. But they weren't afraid. They had each other. And that was all that mattered. Hand in hand, the sisters began to walk back through the woods, following the path that had led them so far astray. The woods seemed to guide them now, the trees parting to make way, the branches reaching out to offer support. The air was filled with the sounds of life, the chirping of birds, the rustling of leaves, the buzzing of insects. The sun peeked through the canopy, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. The woods were no longer a menacing presence, but a beautiful and vibrant place, full of wonder and magic. As they walked, Rose began to remember what had happened. She remembered the song, the irresistible pull that had drawn her into the woods. She remembered the feeling of peace and tranquility, of being free from pain and sorrow. But she also remembered the emptiness, the lack of connection, the feeling of being lost and alone. "It was like a dream," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "A beautiful dream, but not real." "I know," Lily said, squeezing her hand. "But it's over now. You're safe. You're with me." They continued to walk, their steps quick and light. As they reached the edge of the woods, they turned back to look at the path that had led them there. But it was gone. The dull-lined path had disappeared, swallowed up by the trees and the undergrowth. There was no trace of it, as if it had never existed. The woods had closed in behind them, erasing the path, sealing off the entrance to its hidden world. Lily and Rose looked at each other, their eyes filled with a mixture of awe and relief. They had escaped. They had broken the spell. They had survived the whispering woods. They stepped out of the woods and into the sunlight, their faces radiant with joy. The village was spread out before them, a beacon of hope and safety. They ran towards it, their hearts filled with gratitude and love. As they ran, they could hear the faint echo of the song, carried on the wind. But it was no longer a haunting melody, but a sweet and soothing lullaby, a reminder of their grandmother's love, a symbol of their unbreakable bond. They knew that they would never forget their experience in the whispering woods, but they also knew that it had made them stronger, more resilient, more grateful for the simple things in life, love, family, and the beauty of the world around them. The villagers greeted them with a mixture of awe and disbelief. They had heard the stories, they had seen the disappearances, but they had never seen anyone return from the whispering woods. Lily and Rose were living proof that the legends could be broken, that the power of the woods could be overcome. Back in their small cottage, the silence was finally broken. The air was filled with the comforting sounds of home, the crackling of the fire, the ticking of the clock, the gentle murmur of their voices. Rose was still disoriented, struggling to remember what had happened in the woods. The memories were fragmented, like pieces of a broken mirror. She remembered the song, the peace, the feeling of being lost and alone. But she also remembered Lily, her bravery, her determination, her unwavering love. Lily stayed by her side, comforting her, reassuring her, helping her to piece together the fragments of her memory. She told her about the ethereal being, about the riddle, about the fairy house. She sang the lullaby, her voice filled with emotion. Slowly, Rose began to remember. The fog in her mind began to clear, and the memories of their shared childhood came flooding back, clear and bright. The lullaby was no longer a haunting melody, but a comforting reminder of their grandmother's love, a symbol of their unbreakable bond. The singing was gone, replaced by the comforting sounds of home, the crackling of the fire, the ticking of the clock, the gentle murmur of their voices. The dolls were gone too, banished from their nightmares, replaced by the familiar toys and treasures of their childhood. The sisters were forever changed by their experience in the Whispering Woods. They had faced their fears, they had overcome their challenges, they had learned the true meaning of love and loss. Rose had learned the importance of respecting boundaries, of listening to her sister's warnings, of not letting her curiosity lead her astray. She had learned that even the most beautiful dreams can be dangerous, that the real world, with all its pain and sorrow, is worth fighting for. Lily had learned the power of courage, of determination, of unwavering love. She had learned that even the most terrifying forces can be overcome, that even the darkest nights can be followed by the brightest dawns. Their bond was stronger than ever, forged in the fires of fear and loss. They knew that they could face anything, as long as they had each other. They still lived near the Whispering Woods, but they never ventured inside again. They respected its boundaries, they honored its power, they remembered its lessons. And every time it rained, they could hear the faint whisper of Rose's voice, carried on the wind. But it was no longer a sorrowful plea for help, but a joyful call of hope. Lily, it seemed to say. We're free. The rain was no longer a reminder of their loss, but a symbol of their survival, a testament to their unbreakable bond, a promise of a brighter future. The sisters were home, safe and sound, forever bound by the power of sisterly love. The end.